News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Make it a preset, y'all. 800-288-WBAP is our number, 800-288-9227. Did you hear Joe Biden during Helene, which really shows how much of a disaster he and Kamala have done in handling Helene, how much of a poor job, how terrible a job. Listen to this. Did you hear this? This is amazing. This is like a day or two or three after the storm hit, and the damage was intense. This is what Joe Biden, listen to this close. This is amazing.
What do the states in the storm zone need, Mr. President?
Okay.
What do the states in the storm zone, what do they need after what you saw today?
Oh, in the storm zone?
Yes, sir.
I'm wondering what storm you're talking about. They're getting everything they need. And they're very happy across the board.
I'm wondering which storm you're talking about. This is 4 days after Helene hit the Florida coast and went up and devastated Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, and parts of Virginia. 4 days afterwards. What storm are you talking about? The people are getting everything they need. They're happy. Have you heard anything like that? That's what you call a disaster. Not what happened, but how he's handling it, and how Kamala and him are handling it is an absolute disaster. And by the way, if you want to know where FEMA's priorities have been, you'll hear from Vice Presidential candidate J.D. Vance in a second in his editorial in the Wall Street Journal today, buttressing that where their priorities were, they were in the wrong place. They were with the illegals. But here is the Helene. This is the FEMA focusing on making sure LGBTQIA++ people get treated better than normal folk do in a hurricane.
Sparked a few things in my mind, thinking about preparedness and how you said, LGBTQIA people and people who have been disadvantaged already are struggling. They already have their own things to deal with. So you add a disaster on top of that. It's just compounding on itself.
It's part of like a 3-4 minute video compilation of the FEMA meeting talking all about LGBTQIA+, and they're more important than you and I are. I think everybody matters, regardless of their sexual orientation, but that's the focus, as well as illegal immigrants. You'll hear about that from J.D. Vance in a moment. But Roy in Oklahoma has called in. I'm asking, is Kamala making a big mistake attacking DeSantis over the approaching hurricane? And doesn't this show poor leadership? And do you think Kamala and Joe failed in their recovery efforts for Helene and probably will fail again with Milton? Roy, you're on WBAP.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Kamala Harris is doing exactly what she knows how to do, and that's deflect and blame other people. That's what she's doing. I mean, look at everything that's happened and the absolute and total failure that this administration has been to these people that have been affected by this. I mean, they have failed on every point, everything. And the sad point is it's all over the internet. It's everywhere you turn and everywhere you look. There are videos of people saying, FEMA's not here. We don't see them. Nobody's come to help us. There's 3 men on the ground, Dr. Phil, Donald Trump, and Elon Musk, that's helping all of those people right now. Dolly Parton came on.
She gave $1 million of her own money.
Gave $1 million out of her own money.
Mm-hmm.
Got Walmart to help her out with $1 million. Where's Taylor Swift? Where's Whoopi Goldberg? Where's these people that, are so great patriots? Where are they at? I am so angry with these folks right now. Kamala Harris can only deflect. And this is my prediction.
Why is she attacking Ron DeSantis? So he's not running against her, and nobody said he did anything wrong.
Because all of the videos are pointing out how they failed in Florida, and she thinks it's Ron's fault. Or that's the only person she can figure out to blame for it.
I haven't seen failure in Florida. I haven't seen FEMA failure or DeSantis failure in Florida, but I have seen massive failure by FEMA in Georgia and in particularly in North Carolina. Yeah, the administration. Okay, yeah, and FEMA under them. Yeah,
she came on after 6 days and did the big speech about we're going to give everybody $750. There's videos emails everywhere.
People can't get it.
Saying,
they're being denied.
We applied, and we were denied.
Yeah, a single woman said, I can only get 360 or something. And they debit they send a credit to your account. But if the ATM was washed away and your husband or your dad was washed away and he's dead somewhere in a pile of mud in a mudslide, and you can't get to a bank because there's no ATM or bank open, and there's no water or food for 7-8 days now, or 9 days, 10 days, what is this?
It's chaos.
And yesterday yesterday I reported the New York Post, I believe it was, that said FEMA is telling local residents, sorry, we can't go to your house because there's a road closed sign and we can't drive around it. And the people are like, we're driving around it every day. What are you doing? Yeah, so that's your Biden. Well,
she's barking up the wrong tree and going after DeSantis, and he'll chew her up. And I think what's going to happen, she wasn't getting the talking points from her handlers on this one, and she blew it. And now she doesn't know what to do with it. And I think it's going to blow up in her face. It wouldn't surprise me at this point that this will cause such a huge impact that Trump's going to win by a landslide.
I don't think a landslide's at all going to happen. I think as of right now, you're looking at a solid win. At best, maybe 300 electoral votes instead of the necessary, I think, 270 or 272, whatever. What does he need? 270, I think, to win. So I appreciate your call. And speaking of government incompetence and private efforts being incredibly successful, I want to share that with you. I'm asking tonight, though, lines wide open. You can chime in right now at 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227. Is Kamala making a big mistake on attacking DeSantis over the approaching hurricane? Does this show poor leadership on her part for picking a fight with somebody who's not fighting with anybody, trying to just do a good job for the state? And do you think Kamala and Joe have failed in their recovery efforts for Helene and probably will fail again with Milton, as I do? 800-288-WBAP is our number. 800-288-9227. Look at this. This is a great little column in the Free Press today talking about, it says right here, Elon succeeded where FEMA failed. FEMA was not only failing residents, it was actively hindering those trying to help it. Samaritans had no patience for federal efforts. They posted their complaints on X, being blocked by FEMA. And Elon Musk spread the word for his 200 million followers. He posted a text from SpaceX engineer installing Starlink receivers in Asheville, North Carolina, that read, quote, FEMA is actively blocking shipments and seizing goods and services locally and locking them away to state that they are on their own. It is very real and scary how much they have done to stop people helping. Musk also complained, the Free Press says, that the government was preventing private helicopters from landing. Peter Buttigieg denied it, tweeting, if you're encouraging a problem, give me a call. Musk got in touch with Buttigieg, who then later led to a resolution of the issue. Thanks for expediting the approval of supply flights, Musk tweeted. What happens when you're in the middle of hell in North Carolina and you don't have a man with 200 million followers on Twitter? Do you understand these people would be screwed to this very moment if it wasn't for a man that owns Starlink and other places and has 200 million followers and tweeted this out to Buttigieg and said, hey, dude, they would still be screwed right now. Starlink has given 1,000 people, 1,000 separate households, free internet with its own powered Starlink and a generator to 1,000 people. There's 8,000 on the list, and I guarantee you he'll get them all. He's not charging them a dime. How much does a generator cost? $1 or $2 grand at least, depending on how big it is? God bless Elon Musk. He also complained, let's see here, in 2022, this is brilliant from the Free Press. This is how bad things are. In 2022, the FCC made a shockingly bad decision. It had an agreement to pay SpaceX $886 million to install Starlink receivers in rural homes all over the country. Remember this rural broadband program that was like, 42 or $65 billion to give everybody broadband in the rural areas? Joe Biden promised that. He did that right away. Guess what? Kamala's in charge of it. Guess how many people have broadband in 4 years? None! And the zero. That's right. That's exactly right. Yes. Hold on. Here's how many people have internet in the broadband project.
0.0.
There you go. And the Biden-Harris message to the rural people?
You'll get nothing, you like it.
Okay, Brian in Paradise is going to come on with us coming up in a moment, coming up next with What If Trump Were in Office Today? That's an interesting thought. And I'm going to finish off here because the reason why the FCC canceled an $886 million contract with Starlink, which today you're seeing why Starlink is the perfect way to get broadband to rural America everywhere. They canceled it for politics. FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr wrote a scathing dissent claiming the ruling certainly fits the Biden administration's pattern of regulatory harassment of Musk and his companies. They say Boeing spaceship sprung several helium leaks. NASA had to turn to SpaceX as its only option to get them to Earth. Shortly after Biden's inauguration in 21, he said, here's $65 billion for infrastructure. Musk beat him to it by 9 years. He said he would get infrastructure all over the country, broadband and rural. Musk beat it to him by 9 years, launching satellites instead of digging fiber optic cable lines underground. And they canceled it. They don't want the people to have broadband internet if it doesn't mean they don't get their friends don't get the money. See this? And if it means that the guys that they are their political opponents get money off of it, guys that support Trump. See this? That's who these people are. They would rather screw you than do what they promised and what they spent all of our money to do. Independent journalist named Taylor Kramer, who's covering rescue efforts in Western North Carolina, tells the Free Press they're doing research and rescue stuff. They're about a week late when he talks about FEMA. A week late. There you go. All right, you'll hear what Vice President candidate J.D. Vance says about how the FEMA has taken its eyes off the ball because Biden has made them hyper-political. You will hear from in his own words, from his column in the Journal today. I highlighted a couple things. And then Brian First comes out of the box next from Paradise with his take on if Trump were in office today, how things would be going on the recovery efforts. And my question is Kamala making a big mistake in attacking DeSantis over the approaching hurricane? Does this show poor leadership? And do you think Kamala and Joe failed in their recovery efforts for Helene and most likely are going to fail again with Hurricane Milton? That's next on the Chris Crock Show, 800-288-WBAP, on News Talk 820 WBAP, and now on FM at 93.3.
We have people on oxygen that are completely out now. We have babies up there with no formula, nothing.
This is like a Katrina on steroids.
We've lost friends. There's been landslides. The day that it happened, it was so bad. Our children thought we were dead. And we had to hang on to boulders, trees, and go through a roaring creek to get out. But we're alive.
We try to find our friends. We can't. We don't know
if they're dead or alive.
There's no power, there's no water, there's no internet, there's no cell phone coverage. We're just it's a disaster.
Just pray for everybody here. Everything's replaceable. Life is not.
No water, barely got food, everything expiring in the fridge. So.
FEMA is not on the ground there at all. They are not in these cities, not in these towns, and not in these villages.
All right, there's the response. J.D. Vance writing a column today. I'll read parts of it in a second. He is saying that Biden-Harris mismanaged Hurricane Helene, and I couldn't agree with him more. Question is Kamala making a big mistake in attacking Ron DeSantis over this approaching hurricane by not calling her back, supposedly? And does this show poor leadership? Why is she doing this? He's not running against her, and nobody says he's doing a bad job. In fact, Joe Biden said he's doing a great job, and I gave him my cell phone to call me if he needs anything. And do you think Kamala and Joe failed in their recovery efforts for Helene, and most likely will fail again with Hurricane Milton? I mean, think of this. On October 2nd, 6 days, J.D. Vance writes, after the storm made landfall, the Defense Department announced 1,000 troops were authorized to deploy to the response zone. And for example, 82nd Airborne bring troops with them, debris cleaning, he says, and water purification equipment. On Friday, October 4th, fewer than half the troops were conducting operations, which would be 8 days later. Fewer than half of them were conducting operations and were deployed to Western Carolina. Deployment days of delays became so severe that North Carolina Senators Ted Budd and Tom Tillis issued a joint statement October 4th calling for an active-duty military leader who has extensive experience with operations of this magnitude to lead moving forward. They needed a Russell Honoré. It seemed to have an effect, Vance writes. The rest of the active duty forces were deployed by the evening of October 6th. Pentagon authorized an additional 500, including advanced command and control resources. He also lets you know that much earlier was in Katrina, I think 2 or 3 or 4 days earlier in Katrina, the military was sent in. And before we take Brian's call in Paradise plus your call at 800-288-WBAP, 800-288-9227, it's important to play Barack Hussein Obama condemning George Bush, who has done twice as good as Kamala and Joe have done. He was there 4 days later. Kamala and Joe showed up 5 or 6 days later. Here's Obama condemning Bush.
Of New Orleans and the Gulf Coast extended their hand for help. Help was not there. We can talk about levees that couldn't hold, about a FEMA that seemed not just incompetent, but paralyzed and powerless, about a president who only saw the people from the window of an airplane instead of down here on the ground, trying to provide comfort and aid.
Well, there they are. Much more active deployed troops were deployed much earlier for active duty than this time, says J.D. Vance. Brian in Paradise, you're on News Talk 820 WBAP. Welcome. What do you got?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask kind of like a hypothetical. I know nobody likes to do what-ifs. However, given the response that the Biden-Harris administration has done to date, my hypothetical is, what if the only difference was Trump was the administration right now? What would the mainstream media be doing to Trump right now, given the response?
They would have ripped it on the third day, second or third day.
They would have eviscerated him. And so anybody that thinks that Biden-Harris is doing a good job, make that hypothetical, and you'll find out really quick how bad a job they've done.
Well, I think the people of North Carolina can tell you how they think he's done. And I think it's pretty obvious. I appreciate your call, Brian. Thank you very much. 800-288-WBAP is our number. 800-288-9227. Is Kamala making a big mistake attacking DeSantis over his handling of the approaching hurricane? It's unbelievable, by the way. And then do you think Kamala and Joe failed in their recovery efforts for Helene and probably will also fail again with Milton? I sure do. It's because of the focus. FEMA was focused on illegals and LGBTQIA+++. I'm going to quote J.D. Vance in his column today in the Journal. FEMA has funneled millions of dollars to non-governmental organizations whose stated goal is facilitating mass migration to the U.S. The effort stems from a White House directive to reorient FEMA's institutional focus away from U.S. citizens towards illegal aliens. I'm going to share a little bit more about that coming up next. Plus, you're going to hear Senator Tom Cotton, destroy liberal Democrat NBC host Kristen Welker on the money coming from FEMA, and instead of going to help us, it's helping illegals. He smacks her down hard on that in a great interview. That's coming up next on the Chris Crock Show. And then we get into, is Doug Emhoff not only knocking up the nanny, but allegedly also slapping a woman so hard she spun around? And now is he an a-hole and a misogynist who hired a trophy secretary because she was pretty and retaliated against a woman who didn't flirt back? This L.A. law firm, several ex-staff are claiming a lot of bad things. Dude man should not be lecturing us about toxic masculinity and how to treat a woman. After all, he's rather a hypocrite, isn't he? You'll hear about that next as well on the Chris Crock Show at 9:33 on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3.
It is true that FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security have been spending billions of dollars on migrants. Now, I understand some people say they're separate funds, but we just passed a short-term spending bill. It's very common for the administration to come and ask for permission to move money between funds, especially to prepare for emergencies. And second, I would note that this administration seems to have no problem finding money when they want to spend it on their priorities. When they need hundreds of billions of dollars to pay off student loans for graduate students in gender studies programs, they somehow find it. When it's trying to get helicopters to deliver food and water and cellular service and life-saving medicine into these mountain valleys, they somehow can't seem to find the money.
Tom Cotton is so awesome because he's brilliant and he's very sharp, but he doesn't come across, he's so calm and gentile with you. He's also Gentile. He's calm and genteel. I am too. But he's calm and Gentile. He's a Gentile, he's gentle, he's calm, And but he zips you, zaps you, and he really gets you, but he does it in such a calm way, So these people have to act like jerks to try to stop him, and he'll keep going, but he's very calm. I love that. He's a great asset in that regard. I wanted to share the last piece here of this J.D. Vance column in the Wall Street Journal today, Biden-Harris mismanaged Hurricane Helene. And then we get to the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff. First, he's impregnated his nanny. Now he's accused of smacking a woman so hard she spun around. And now a new accusation today from many people in his former law firm that he is a foul-mouthed a-hole misogynist who hired a trophy secretary because she was pretty and retaliated against women who didn't flirt back. I'm glad he's lecturing us about toxic masculinity and how a man should treat a woman. Isn't that amazing? I find how a man should treat a woman through my faith. And it turns out that you're a lot better of a man towards a woman if you follow me and my faith than this guy and his money and his chauvinist pig stuff. We'll talk about that in a sec. You don't want to miss that. But finishing this off, he talks about this, Vance does. FEMA has funneled millions of dollars into NGOs, non-governmental organizations, whose stated goal is facilitating mass migration into the U.S. The effort stems from a White House directive to reorient FEMA's institutional focus away from the U.S. citizens and toward illegal aliens who have no right to be here or whose legal status depends on the say-so of the Biden-Harris administration. In 2020, Mayorkas directed FEMA to participate in a government-wide effort to receive and shelter illegal migrants. By 2023, FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell was testifying that although FEMA is not an immigration agency, it would, quote, continue to focus on supporting jurisdictions that are managing the care of immigrants through our shelter and services program. While some have claimed the funding going to these programs is distinct, the same cannot be said for attention and focus of Biden-Harris officials. It all comes from the same limited supply of attention and focus. It's on the illegals, not you. I put that extra part for emphasis. Can you tell? Hooah. And then, of course, he writes, in 2023, FEMA hosted a panel titled Helping LGBTQIA Plus Community Before Disasters. So they literally want you to focus on, it said that and then it said preparedness and mitigation considerations. So their focus is on helping illegals and LGBTQIA+. When I'm drowning, I don't care who it is, but I want someone to save me if I can't save myself. And I would expect anyone, including myself, chiefly, to do the exact same thing. If they're flaming gay with a rainbow flag taped around their forehead, I don't care. I'm going to save them. Not these folks with Biden-Harris. They put that on before everything. Sick, isn't it? Okay. Doug Emhoff. This is in the Daily Mail today. Another exclusive. This is bad. Doug Emhoff was a foul-mouthed a-hole and a misogynist who hired a trophy secretary because she was pretty and retaliated against women who didn't flirt back. At the L.A. law firm he was at, ex-staff members claim. Attorneys who work with Emhoff and his former Venable, which I guess is the name of the firm, says he yelled expletives, held a men-only cocktail hour in the office, revoked work perks for women who did not flirt with him, and took only young, attractive associates in a limousine to a ball. Sounds like a great guy, doesn't it? Sounds like a guy who would impregnate his nanny or smack his girlfriend so hard she spun around in public at a taxi stand in Cannes Film Festival. A 2019 lawsuit, the Daily Mail reports today, claims sex discrimination by other partners at the LA office Emhoff ran, and that while engaged to Harris, he hired an unqualified part-time model as a legal secretary because she was young, attractive, and friendly with the powerful men in the office, quote unquote. This is all from lawsuits. This wasn't going on. This didn't just come out now. This is discovered now, but this is from before. Before becoming the country's first second gentleman, Emhoff was a managing director at Venable in their 23rd story office in Los Angeles. Clearly, he's a guy who can relate to us, the little people. Now his former colleagues say the Venable Los Angeles office, which he ran from 2006 to 2016, that's a long time, that's 11 years, are coming forward with allegations about his inappropriate a-hole behavior at the workplace. They have this in quotations. They all spoke up on the agreement they would not be named. One senior former staffer says Emhoff bragged about getting the F out of my office to a female partner at the firm, later telling his top male colleagues that he, quote, put her in her place. She had to ask him something, the ex-staffer says. The office door was closed. She said to his secretary, is he on the phone? She said no. She tapped on the door. He didn't answer. She slightly opened the door and stuck her head in. He yelled, get the F out of my office. What's worse was he bragged about it to the management at Venable, and they were aghast. He's an a-hole. He told them how he put her in her place. A misogynist, that's who does that. A female ex-staffer said it was well known at the time at the firm that Emhoff was a very flirty, and that if you weren't flirting back or didn't respond positively, then you were on his S-word list. Full word. This former venerable lawyer accused him of favoritism, saying the consequences of not flirting with him were that you won't get to work on the cases you wanted to work on. This is a great guy to speak out against toxic masculinity. This is a great guy to teach us how to treat your wife. Impregnate the nanny, flirt with people, yell, get the F out of my office at women and brag about it, hire people that are hot, that are incompetent, and smack your girlfriend. What's not to like about this guy? Who's in? Once again, we see Kamala's judgment at play, and it's freaking brilliant. Who doesn't want to get smacked so hard you spin around? Who doesn't want to get yelled at and say, get the F out of my office, and get mocked? Who doesn't want somebody getting hired for their looks, not their qualifications? This is fantastic. Actually, I think you're right. He took lessons from Diddy. That's exactly right. Diddy taught him well. I'm sure he was at his parties where there were little children walking around. God help those children. I've got more. I'm going to share part 2 with you, and it keeps getting worse. And this is not one person. This is like a bevy of people from his office that he ran for 11 years in a lawsuit. Wow. Okay, here's my questions, or as Dwayne would say, my questions. Do you believe these accusations, along with allegedly slapping his former girlfriend and cheating on his wife with his nanny getting her pregnant? Do you believe these accusations? Should this guy be lecturing us on toxic masculinity and how to treat women as equals? He's on TV a lot saying how to treat a woman and how toxic masculinity is bad. And then people like Jen Psaki are humping his leg on MSNBC like, you're so awesome, you're a new man, you're redefining manhood. Does this sound like something you want to be like? You want your son to be like? Is this somebody you want to marry your daughter or work for your daughter? Have your daughter working with him, or your wife working with him? Is he a chauvinist pig to you, based on what you're hearing here? And does this somehow tarnish Kamala's reputation? It sure does to me. Look at Tim Walz. That's her first major decision. This is one of her decisions here, too. Not good. Not good judgment. 800-288-WBAP. Line's wide open. Chime in right now. 800-288-9227. Part duh of Doug Emhoff was a foul-mouthed a-hole misogynist who hired a trophy secretary because she was pretty and retaliated against women who didn't flirt back. That's the headline. That's next on the Chris Crock Show at News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3 at 9:47. News Talk 820 WBAP now on FM at 93.3. Well, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. He's been dismissing it and ignoring it. His campaign, or Kamala's campaign, will just do a one-sentence statement, or his office will, saying, none of these things happen, blah, blah, blah. Let's hear how awesome he is as Jen Psaki leg humps Doug Emhoff in being an amazing man who redefines masculinity and treating a woman right.
Important part, an interesting part of how people have talked about your role here is how your role has reshaped the perception of masculinity. And I'm not sure you planned on that, but you are an incredibly supportive.
I got to pause. He is such a freaking hero to me. This guy's amazing. Your look on your face, Garrett, too, is like, I'm serious. Do you actually think I'm being serious when I'm saying this? Because I'm like, does he actually, the way you look at me, I'm like, does he think I'm serious? Oh, this is fun here.
Incredibly supportive spouse. Has that been an evolution for you? And do you think that's part of the role you might play?
I mean, how hard have you worked out on your arm, your swing, so you can smack the woman hard enough to spin her around in a full circle? That must take years to perfect. Have you slapped a lot of women before that grand slam that day? I mean, how many times did you try to impregnate your nanny before you succeeded? You're so tenacious. Those are great qualities in a husband. Even though it's not your wife, it's great, tenacious. It's very attractive to women. You won't stop until you get that baby that you don't want. And now I hear this new headline: Doug Emhoff, a foul-mouthed a-hole and misogynist who hired a trophy secretary because she was a pretty and retaliated against women who didn't flirt back at the law firm. Let's continue on.
You might play as first gentleman.
It's funny. I've started to think a lot about this. I've always been like this. My dad was like this. And to me, it's the important
Wait a minute. He's always been like this. His dad's been like this. Is horrifying. His dad is knocking up the nanny, too, and smacking women? His dad's a foul-mouthed a-hole misogynist who hired a trophy secretary who's pretty and retaliates against women who don't flirt with him? So he's following his dad? My gosh, the humanity, the horrors! Stop this man! Somebody needs to stop this man! My gosh, there's too many nannies out there that are vulnerable! Do you believe these accusations, along with allegedly slapping his former girlfriend and cheating on his wife and his nanny, with his nanny? I hope he didn't cheat on his nanny and his wife. Should this guy be lecturing us on toxic masculinity and how to treat a woman as equals? Is he a chauvinist pig to you? And does this somehow tarnish Kamala's reputation? 800-288-WBAP. Line's wide open. 800-288-9227. Would you want him working with your wife or your daughter? Would you want him dating or marrying your daughter? I sure wouldn't. Another woman who worked at the firm for several years and continuing on with the lawsuit. Daily Mail exclusively reporting this today. Another woman who worked at the law firm for several years said Emhoff ran men-only drink nights in the office. He had for many years cocktail parties where only men were invited in the office on Friday evening. When my colleague brought that to the attention of Venable, that's a law firm that he ran for 11 years, it stopped. The female attorney claimed Emhoff also forced his colleagues to give him a cut of fees from new clients using his control over allocating staff to new cases. If you bring in a client, you get compensated, she said. A woman who worked under Emhoff as a junior attorney at Venable told Daily Mail that he favored young, pretty girls at the firm. If there was an event like Justice Ball, he would favor certain people. Usually it was young, pretty girls. He would prefer them to ride with him. He would get in a limo. I just don't think his behavior was appropriate for the position he was in. One top former Venerable staffer told Daily Mail, this is like 4 or 5 people that he worked with in an office he ran for 11 years. One former top Venerable staffer told the Daily Mail, plenty of people were aware Emhoff's alleged inappropriate behavior at the firm. A former legal secretary at Venable, Marjan Rabbi, sued the firm and 2 of its LA partners in 2019 for alleging sex discrimination. She claimed Venable senior attorneys yelled at her, humiliated her, and demeaned her. And then it says he then married then Attorney General Kamala Harris in August of 2014. When the woman named Rabbi joined the firm in 2014. He was promoted to West Coast Managing Director in 2015. The filing claimed Katya was an office code for euphemism for a trophy secretary. As early as October 2014, Rabbi was told by a lawsuit defendant Venerable partner Alex Weingarten, who yelled at her, said she was useless to him like a child. Finally, he drove her from his desk after deciding he deserved a young, attractive secretary like his partner Doug Emhoff had. Her name, Katya, was office code for... Katya refers to an assistant hired by Doug Emhoff that was widely considered unqualified and hired because she was young, attractive, and friendly with powerful men in the office. All right. This is referring to Katia Calderon, 36, who worked at the firm in 2014. I guess she was hired by Doug Emhoff. She worked as a part-time model, including for Bikes and Babes fashion brand. Manco has been pictured partying at the Playboy Mansion and GQ magazine, Coachella Festival, socializing with Hollywood actors, trying out for Bravo reality show TV matchmaker. All right. Well, there you go. Wonderful company. Wonderful man, huh? Okay, coming up next on the Chris Crock Show, Kamala's 60 Minutes interview. We've got some great clips. I consider it a failure, a bad failure. How do you think she did? That's coming up next at 3 minutes after 10 on the Chris Crock Show on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3.